A theme that has been developing lately on my channel has been telling the stories of guys who made it big in the NBA against all odds. The circumstances of each of their situations differed, and each of them managed to pave their way to a big role on an NBA team by going about their business in the best way they could. And for today's video, we will once again be continuing with that trend. Today's video is actually going to be about a teammate of Terrence Davis, who I made a video not too long ago about, being Fred VanVleet. Many of you probably became very familiar with VanVleet during last year's NBA Finals, where he balled out and helped the Raptors take home the title, but if you weren't familiar with him before that, then stay tuned, because his story is very interesting, and he was by no means guaranteed anything that he's accomplished. Before we get started though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. Fred VanVleet grew up in Illinois in a town called Rockford, which is a place that, in VanVleet's own words, you wouldn't want your kid to grow up there. A ton of crime, a lot of bad things going on, and the pressure to fall down the wrong path is pretty high, and VanVleet started to experience this turmoil firsthand from a very young age. When he was only 5 years old, he unfortunately lost his father in a tragedy, which is obviously so tough for anyone to have happen to them. His mother eventually did remarry, and she married a man named Joe Danforth, who worked as a veteran police officer, and it was Danforth that actually played a big role in VanVleet's life by steering him away from trouble and encouraging him to focus on basketball. He would wake up with Fred at 5 o'clock in the morning every day, and teach him basketball technique, as well as putting him through some workouts and practices. It was the exact kind of distraction that VanVleet needed, and in the long run definitely helped him out. The Rockford area was known for typically having a few stud athletes with potential to make it big, but ultimately more often than not, their potential would go to waste because of off-the-court issues, so Fred really did not want to find himself in that same boat. He played high school basketball at local Auburn High, and fairly early on in his playing days, he came to be one of the best players on the team, but he wasn't quite mature enough to handle the responsibilities that came with being a leader. In his freshman and sophomore seasons, VanVleet looked back and admitted that he was kind of a jerk to his teammates when they made mistakes, and he would get frustrated at them when they wouldn't work as hard as he would. It took some serious self-reflection and several discussions with his stepfather before he started making changes mentally for the better, because what he needed to recognize is that players aren't going to want to play as hard for a leader that demeans them and embarrasses them out on the court. It takes a balance of encouragement and leading by example to get team chemistry where it needs to be, and those changes started to come about in his final 2 seasons of high school basketball. The progression both as a player and as a leader helped him get named to First Team All-State by the Chicago Tribune, the Associated Press, and the Chicago Sun-Times. He led the team to a 22-game win streak his senior year, which got Auburn to their first state Final Four since 1975, and they ultimately finished in 3rd place. When the time came to make the next step to college basketball, he was between a 3- and 4-star recruit, depending on which ranking you were looking at, and was receiving offers from several Division I programs, but pretty much only mid-majors. He got offers from Colorado State, Kent State, Drake, Northern Illinois, Southern Illinois, and Wichita State, and he ultimately committed to play for Wichita State at the perfect time. In his freshman season, he was coming off the bench as a backup point guard, and throughout most of the season, he was kind of inconsistent and didn't really prove much. But then when March Madness rolled around, that year, he made himself known on the big stage, with 2 of his best games of the year coming during the tournament. The first was when he scored 13 points in a win over number 1 seed Gonzaga, and the other came when he scored 12 points against Ohio State in the Elite Eight. That year, Wichita State made it to the Final Four, and from that point on, the team became known as one of the best mid-majors year in and year out. After that incredible run as a freshman, Fred became a full-time starter for each of the next 3 seasons, and every year, he got better and better. He became more of a true leader, continuing on the progress he made in high school, his production improved, and Wichita continued to become more well-known in the basketball world. By the end of his college career, Fred was an All-American, a Conference Player of the Year, and a recipient of several other individual awards that previous winners had gone on to become legit NBA prospects. But for VanVleet, teams were kind of wary. He's always been someone who managed to overcome adversity in any way it's thrown at him, but perhaps the biggest thing he's had to overcome, specifically as a basketball player, is that he's fairly undersized. He's a point guard, so he was able to get away with it at this point, but he's only 5'11" and 180 pounds, so the disadvantage from a height perspective and a strength perspective was one of the biggest reasons NBA teams were skeptical. He wasn't invited to the draft combine, so in order to continue to pursue his NBA dream, he had to go through 18 individual pre-draft workouts, with many of them not even being taken very seriously. In his own words, VanVleet described this process by saying, "I've been in draft workouts where there's nobody in the gym. I've been in workouts where the team doesn't even know who is running the workouts. We couldn't get a ride to airports, crazy stuff. There's a lot of shady stuff going on out there." When you're not a prioritized first-round candidate or even a sneaky second-round flyer, life is kind of tough. However, out of those 18 workouts, the one that really stuck out to him and ultimately decided his fate moving forward was the one set up by Dan Tolzman, who works as the assistant GM of the Raptors. Tolzman had scouted Wichita State a ton in the past when he was analyzing Cleanthony Early previously, but while watching him, he said that VanVleet was always sticking out as well. Tolzman admitted he had many of the same worries about his physical profile that many other scouts had, but he remained impressed because of Fred's intense defense, his toughness, and his ability to get into the paint and make a play from there with ease. On the day of the draft, VanVleet was watching it go down surrounded by friends and family, as most draft hopefuls do, and he even drew interest from a few teams late in the second round. But funnily enough, similarly to how I explained that Terrence Davis did it in my other video, Fred's agency actually advised teams not to take him because they didn't feel as though they were good fits for Fred to actually have a shot at making it in the league. Again, the famous phrase that he used as motivation was that he bet on himself in order to make it on his terms. After the draft, he almost immediately agreed to a training camp invite for the Raptors, and through summer league play and practice, he was now tasked with beating out 5 other guys without guaranteed contracts for one spot on the team, since the Raptors already had 14 guaranteed players on the roster. Long story short, he impressed, continued to produce, and because of that, their all-star franchise point guard Kyle Lowry took a liking to him, which other players on the Raptors acknowledged Lowry doesn't do all that often, especially for undrafted guys. Lowry took him under his wing because he saw a lot of himself in him through his fiery nature, the fact that he was undersized, and with how crafty he is at running the point. Yet, even with all of this, in year 1, he was still behind 3 other point guards on the roster, with Kyle Lowry, Corey Joseph, and Delone Wright all being established members in the rotation. It wasn't until the next year, when Corey Joseph went to Indiana, that Fred even had a chance, and with that chance, he took it and ran. Despite his box score averages being fairly mediocre, he finished 3rd in the voting for 6th Man of the Year, because that Raptors team had one of the best benches in the league, and VanVleet's impact on that unit was a major reason why. His poise on the ball, his ability to create and knock down tough shots off the dribble, and his ability to seemingly always make the right play at the right time showed up in his favor regarding several advanced metrics, and from that point on, he was officially on the map as a legitimately impactful member of the rotation. Everything he went through in his life led him to that point, and through all of the ups and downs, he came out better for it. It all culminated with a championship ring last season where he played incredibly off the bench by knocking down several big-time shots and playing unrelenting defense on Steph Curry that held him in check throughout. He got to where he is now because he bet on himself instead of playing it safe and finding himself in a situation that possibly would have set him up to fail. He's now having the best year of his career, posting career highs in points, assists, steals, and rebounds. He will also be a free agent this upcoming summer, so whether it's the Raptors or someone else, he should be in for a massive payday, and he by all means has earned it. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think of VanVleet's journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.